Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to all the attendees, our esteemed panelists and moderator. It gives me immense pleasure to be hosting GeoXchange's first webinar today. We started working on this magazine sometime in March this year when the pandemic hit us. And many of you guys who I connected with asked me what gave you this idea and why a magazine in this industry. Well, I have been part of the communications industry for about 15 years now, and while traveling to New Zealand, I came across people doing landslide mitigation work, which intrigued me, and I started reading more about it. And I realized that however niche it may be, it is definitely a multi-million-dollar sector, and mainstream media is not talking about it. Neither is there a platform to discuss the importance of natural hazard mitigation. So while researching more, while reading more about the industry, I came across a couple of journals catering to the sector. However, there was not a single magazine focusing solely on geohazard mitigation. Hence, GeoXchange was born. Our vision is to create an opportunity for various stakeholders, including decision makers, government bodies, companies, professionals in the industry, to stay abreast with the latest development and strategies and counter geological hazard. I really hope that with time we are able to play an important role in decision-making process of the government and relevant stakeholders, not only in India, but across the globe. I'm truly overwhelmed at the response that we've received for our first edition of the magazine. We have witnessed over 2,000 downloads so far, and we're still counting. So for those of you who have not yet got their hands on the magazine, you can easily download it from our website, which is geo-exchange.com, or you can send us your postal address and we'll be happy to courier the hard copy across. Coming back to our main agenda of today, which is GeoXchange's webinar. Our key focus here is to discuss landslides, its protection and prevention. We received close to 300 registrations today, and it clearly seems remarkable, and it also cements the fact that the industry needs to discuss relevant issues. During the recent monsoon season, the Indian subcontinent has witnessed several landslides. GeoXchange has been talking about this on our website and our social media platforms, and we have been updating our followers about the same. The team at GeoXchange felt that this was the right time to discuss this issue with the experts and finding a solution using latest technologies. Geobrugg and Maccaferri are in forefront of providing protection solutions to landslide-related events, while Encardio Rite specializes in monitoring of these landslides to prevent losses to human life as well as valuable infrastructure. Now, without much ado, I would welcome Dr. Manoj Verman, our moderator for today, who is one of the most respected and eminent personalities across the spectrum. A rock engineering and a tunneling expert, he is also the representative for rock science in India. He would be taking forward the session henceforth and also be introducing our panelists for the day. Here we go. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words and the introduction, Neha. I'm really happy to be a part of GeoXchange's first ever webinar. And it's really impressive with a circulation of over 2,500 copies of a magazine. And as you just told, over 2,000 downloads of the first edition. GeoXchange has created a mark in the industry by initiating a conversation amongst the stakeholders, the policymakers, and the companies that are involved in this profession. I would in fact request all our participants today to download the first edition of the magazine immediately. When I say immediately after the webinar, because if you download now, your focus would be towards that magazine and not towards this webinar. It's that attractive. So download it immediately after the webinar and go through the interesting articles and case studies which are there from across the world. And that really will motivate the team here to do better. I would like to thank our sponsor for today, Geobrugg India Private Limited, the world leaders in providing protection solutions against natural hazards like slope instability, rockfall, debris flows, avalanche, shallow landslides, etc. I would also like to thank our platform partner, Airmeet, which is an all-in-one virtual events platform, and also our communications partner, Scroll Mantra, one of India's fastest growing integrated communications agencies. And now is the time, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our stars for the day, the speakers. Please welcome Mr. Jitin Mukheja, Deputy General Manager, Geobrugg India Private Limited. Jitin has been working with Geobrugg for over 9 years now and has played an instrumental role in designing Geobrugg's products and managing projects in India. Our next speaker after Jitin Mukheja is Ms. Arushi Gujral Bhalla, who is the Managing Director, Encardio Rite Electronics Private Limited. She is responsible for developing and implementing strategic plans for the development of the company. Encardio Rite is one of the leading companies in the world for geotechnical, structural, and environmental monitoring solutions. And she is a very well-known figure, of course, very active. I would now like to invite also Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan, Technical Head of Maccaferri, ISEAP, India, Southeast Asia, Pacific. Dr. Ratnakar is a geotechnical engineer with over 13 years of experience. Maccaferri India is part of the Officine Maccaferri Group, Italy. Okay, so with the introductions done, all the thanks in place, time now to move to the meaty part of the event, the discussion for which we have the eminent panel of speakers here. It's really a proud privilege for me to be able to moderate this discussion, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot through the experience that the speakers are going to share. And as I said, I have the privilege of asking them the questions. And so, my first question goes out to Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan. Dr. Mahajan, I would like to ask you about some of the effects of the global warming on the infrastructure that we see in the hilly regions. Is it really correct to connect the increased number of landslides, debris flows, flash floods to global warming? What's your opinion about it? Dr. Mahajan.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Manoj Verma. Good afternoon, you and all. It's a good privilege to be a part of this first kind of webinar organized by GeoXchange. So coming to the question, it's a very interesting question you have put, where linking of man-made activities to the natural hazards, what we call it as. I would say whether it will be a question, whether it will be a natural hazard or a man-made hazard, that we need to understand. Global warming is a topic which is being discussed in a number of forums, which has made the overall environment of the planet completely, I would say, changed. As I have grown from childhood in the central part of Maharashtra to now the northern part of India, I see there is a change, change in the rainfall pattern. When I say change in the rainfall pattern, is not only pattern being changed, but also the intensity of the rainfall is changed. Now today also I was reading news. Today there is a heavy rain happening in Mumbai. It's the month of September, but usually we don't receive this rainfall after the Ganesh festival. But now we can see it's happening. Coming to the infrastructure, earlier the places or the sites which could have been considered as unsuitable from the construction point of view. But now looking at the demand of growth, we are entering in the seas, we are going in the hills, we are working in hill areas, developing infrastructure. So we are changing the terrain, which is the most important part in hill area is the vegetation. The moment you see some deforestation or small vegetation goes away, the effects are seen after a few years. So I would say it's a mix of global warming plus our infrastructural developments has led to the kind of events what we are seeing. Either it could be the landslide, it could be debris flow or avalanche mitigation. That's what I can see.
Okay, thank you very much. I agree with you that, especially the point you made about now we are moving into more difficult areas where the projects were earlier thought to be unbuildable, but now countries across the world are moving to those difficult areas, and you will have more of these events, the impact of these events, I'm sure. In fact, now I have to ask all the panelists about what lessons are there any lessons that we have learned from these events like flash floods, the cloudburst, especially in Uttarakhand, or my mind goes back a few years when there was this horrific mudslide in Malin in Maharashtra in 2014, or the more recent landslides in Idiki in Kerala. Lots of people lost their lives in these events. So what are your views, speakers, regarding these? And of course, if you can add when you speak, if you have anything to say about projects such as, what comes to my mind really is the Char Dham Road project in Uttarakhand, which is under construction, where hill slopes are being cut to widen the roads. So are we taking enough precaution? Are we implementing enough protection measures to mitigate any landslides in future? That's quite a lot on your plate. So if you could enlighten us with your views, maybe we can start with Jitin Mukheja.
Yeah. If we talk about the mitigation solutions and the available technology to combat the effect of flash floods and debris flow, we must understand what is first difference between the flash flood and the consequent problems that it carries along. See, flash flood, but that we all might not be aware of, it usually happens within a very short span of time, like 4 hours or 5 hours, and within 3 hours it collects all types of debris and all the muck and the wooden log and whatever it comes its way, and we cannot estimate the type of volume it is carrying. We cannot estimate how much, what type of flow will it be. Will it be totally granular, or will it be totally muddy, or will it be blocky, or will it be having a lot of boulders as well? So in order to be prepared for such kinds of problems, we need to identify the geographical area. In which area are we talking about this problem? For example, if we take an example of Uttarakhand, then where we know what kinds of geology is there and what type of flash floods are happening. So we need to segregate the type of problem, and then we need to find out the right solution. If we just talk about flash floods, it's rather more challenging to collect all the water that is coming from the flash floods, and there could not be any such solution where you can install something and which only collects water. So the majority of the problem coming from a flash flood is about 70% it's water, and it's mainly rainwater, and then which combines with the rivers or the streams or the gullies, and then the problem begins to expand. So if you need to filter out the solid parts, then there is a solution, and then you can identify what sorts of gullies are there, what sorts of installation techniques are there, and how much area you have in hand. And talking about the available parameters in hand, how many investigations have been done already, do we have a stable foundation or not? So we have to penetrate into the depth of the problem by finding out the available data in hand, and then you have to find out what type of techniques are really available in the market today. We cannot say that A company or B manufacturer or C organization, they have everything and they can tackle all sorts of natural hazard problems. It won't be totally correct, but it won't be totally wrong to say that nothing can be done about it. Definitely measures can be taken, but if we speak about specifically flash floods, it's more problematic just to catch them. And if we speak about debris flow problems or just landslide or shallow landslide problems, then definitely specifically something can be done about it. You have to estimate the right quantity. You have to go into the historical data, how much problems have been happening in the past. You have to take care of the occurrences which have been happening again and again in that year, in that particular area. So you have to have a collective data. Without that, proper engineering cannot be done.
Sure. Okay, we'll come back to you, Mr. Jitin Mukheja, about your views on investigations and some of the protection measures a little later in the discussion. Do you have anything to say on the specific examples I mentioned, such as the events recently in Uttarakhand or the Malin landslide, mudslide, I would rather say that, or the devastating landslides in several parts of Kerala this year as well as 2 years back, particularly he was mentioned. So do you have anything to say on that, and also projects like Char Dham project where, and there are other projects, some of the projects have a name for, for strategic reason. So do you have anything to say on those?
If we talk specifically about such events, they are these were mostly triggered by heavy rainfalls, and most of the cities were devastated only because of the floods. So much water entering into the cities from be it a plain city if we talk about Kerala, or be it a hilly area if we talk about Uttarakhand. You need to have a proper channel, a proper dam system, and a proper drainage system. Whatever infrastructure we are talking about, be it a plain city or a hilly area. The solutions that we are talking about here are the mitigation solutions, and these specifically cater to very specific problems. In general, the floods, they cannot be estimated and they cannot be quantified, and we cannot ever estimate a quantity of a flood. We can only take examples and we can only estimate them from the historic events. But again, having said that, something which happened in 2014, in 2000 ABC, in whatever year, it could double the quantity or it could triple the quantity. We do not know the return volume of that particular event. So floods is something which is still a very tricky challenge.
Yeah, and yet we have to plan. These days what is happening is clients are increasingly asking for project lives of 100 years or more. So we have to predict the climate change that we have seen from experience. Now we have to predict those. What can happen? Who could have predicted in 2019 what 2020 would be like? So it's a challenge at our hands. But as somebody who provides solutions, who provides services and stuff, you are, I believe, ready with the protection measures and the solutions, but then you need a more holistic approach in which things are predicted more realistically, and the solutions are, yes, site-specific, but also holistic approach to look at the entire thing. Okay, so let's move on to Ms. Arushi Bhalla with the same questions, and I'm sure you've heard what we are trying to extract from the speakers. So your take on some of these things, Arushi.
Hi, how are all of you? First of all, Manoj, thank you for the lovely introduction, and GeoXchange for organizing this Landslide. These events are very informative, and I think it gives us a very good platform to exchange information and brainstorm. So Manoj, I would take your question really in two parts. One, global warming. Can you do something about it? Well, very difficult to say, because most studies that you hear today says the impact is very, very, very deep-seated, and there's not much that we can do. We're trying to make changes in our lifestyle. We're trying to make changes, say, in our construction patterns and how we are doing things. But again, to reverse the impact of global warming is going to take, according to most experts, a reasonable amount of time. If you talk about, do we stop construction like the Char Dham Road and so many other infrastructure projects that are going on in our country or anywhere else in the world, I really don't think that's a possibility. Because we actually, if you talk about our country, really lack infrastructure. We lack the roads, we lack the tunnels, we lack so much of infrastructure. To my mind, the solution really more is that we have to get into green construction. We have to change our methodologies of construction. And we have to see how do we keep that balance between our ecology as well as our infrastructure needs, and come up with a balance. And I feel today you have so many advanced construction mechanisms, and you have so many advanced monitoring mechanisms, that if all of this works in unison, somewhere you can come with a win-win solution, keeping in mind our environmental in mind. And also, regarding predictions, I think a lot of vagaries of nature today can be predicted. We have a lot of models. We have thousands of satellites for revolving all around us. We have so many kinds of imaging available. We have so many different kinds of technologies available. So if it's really put to use, maybe not in 100% situation, but I personally feel a lot of this can be predicted with sincere online monitoring techniques. So I personally feel a balance needs to be drawn out of construction, out of our technologies. We cannot abuse the earth the way we have been doing. We have to take the right precautions, back it up with monitoring, and we can handle the whole situation pretty well. That's my say.
Great. Yeah. No, I fully agree with you. And in fact, the things that you mentioned are really within the umbrella of the nodal agencies, and you have to take the bigger picture together. And we'll talk about that little later, about these agencies and what sort of work they're doing, in your opinion. And so brace yourself for those questions.
Not really.
You might be rubbing some people the wrong way.
Yeah, so not really.
Fine with me. Absolutely, we need to do that earlier than later. And also the monitoring there, I think it's crucial. Whenever you have uncertainty, it's the monitoring of what is actually happening, the structure, how is it actually behaving. There's no other solution but to have the monitoring done. And so many assumptions go into the design and implementation, and those assumptions might change over a period of time. It's the monitoring which will keep you in good stead. So, okay, now, thank you very much for this. And I think we lost Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan, and so he'll be back soon. While we wait for him to come back, we can discuss something else, and which is about, and I'll ask Mr. Jitin Mukheja first about that. There are certain measures, prediction measures, which require some space at the toe of the slope, which means for new projects or even for existing projects, if space is available, you might have to increase the right of way. Okay, or you have an option of not doing that and providing perhaps more expensive slope treatments. So which of these should be given importance to minimize the landslide events, in your opinion?
This is a very interesting question, because I have already experienced such problems in live events a few years back. So first of all, the main problem is I'll go with the very root of the problem, that is the design part. And whenever we are doing some kind of design, we always go with the drawings first. For example, the typical cross sections. So whenever we are receiving TCS for any site and it says if it's a 55-degree slope, it's never implemented at site, and it's in reality it's not even close to 60. So it's rather 70 or 75, and the slope cutting is always the heaviest part, and it's the most expensive part. And most people are shrugging off this kind of responsibility of their shoulders, so that they don't have to invest a lot of money and just go with some kind of short-term solutions just to get on with the work quickly. So if you try to increase the right of way, it involves more earthwork, more cost involvement, more dumping of the material, and not just the cost is there, plus where you dump the material, the site. These are very small problems which are not realized or understood by by a layman. He won't understand where the contractor is going to dump the material, how we will organize the transport, how much money is involved in the earthwork. Every cubic meter is very costly. So this all goes into the record books and into the costing part, and every cubic meter counts. So just increasing right of way by 1 meter is very costly. And this is the commercial part. Then comes the technical part, which is the approval. For example, if there is a chainage and it does not say you cannot go, you have to stick to this right of way. And then if you seek permission, even if you are ready to make investment, if you seek permissions from the authorities or your end clients or your service provider, then it takes a lot of time to get that kind of a permission for right of way. You have to go to the environmental department and forest department, and if there are trees and forest involved, forget about it. Then right of way is something that you just cannot take against. You cannot take any action against it. So then comes a solution that you just have to work with what is available in hand. Then you have to go with the techniques with the existing right of way, even if it's a 70 or 75-degree slope. Sometimes it's a totally vertical slope. And then you have to see what options are available. And thankfully, we have options. So for example, if I am belonging to a company, then I can say if we have worked on such slopes or steep slopes or vertical slopes or not. And yes, we have worked. So we know that such techniques are available. If people are ready to invest in solutions for long-term stability, then yes, it can be done. But if you go to the loop of taking permissions and taking approvals from the department, I have seen people wasting years and still not getting it. So this is a major problem.
Your answer contains many aspects which we can discuss the whole day.
Yeah,
intrigues me. Some of the points that you made shouldn't be there if the detailed project reports and prior to that the feasibility properly, it gives me an inkling that perhaps there's something we need to do there, something better than what we've been doing, perhaps. So I'll come back and ask a question specific to that. Thank you very much for pointing this out. Because when you talk about a certain angle of the slope, and I believe that the design is done based on stability analyses, which might be, okay, 46 degrees, 53 degrees, 55 degrees. And how is possible then the contractor comes back with the approval of the authority, just changes this to 75, 76 degrees. Obviously, they cannot stand with the kind of measures which are goes into, and then we have many examples where the project is stuck now because of this. So there's something which needs to be done on the part of the authorities as well as consultants, those are engaged for this. So we'll come back and ask those uncomfortable questions, but we can see a very bold panel of speakers already. He came back and we again lost Dr. Mahajan. We have Arushi and Ratnakar, can you hear me?
Yeah, Dr. Verman.
Okay. So since you're away for some time and you had a break, I better give you something to speak about before we go to the all-smiling, graceful lady here. So what we are asking is, we're discussing with Jitin, is that, I don't know where we lost you. What was the last thing that you were hearing when we lost you?
I think it was about the Char Dham project and flash floods.
Okay, so you know what we were discussing. So you have any thoughts on that?
What we learned from our past is like 2013 Kedarnath tragedy. I would say it's a kind of a glacier lake. As India, we have a lot of glaciers. It can be monitored remotely. There can be a lot of studies can be done on these glacier lakes to do the analysis of this, and we can definitely predict it. Of course, we need to work in collaboration with different stakeholders, like maybe meteorological department, the researchers working on these glacier lakes, as well as the local people. Plus, for example, you have given an example of Malin landslide as well as Idukhi, it's like steep slopes when they are subjected to the rainfall, which is maybe a severe, not being experienced in the past. So, there can be number of these steep slopes can be identified, but India being a developing country, we cannot monitor all these slopes. We need to balance between cost and requirements. So where we have the population, where there is a property damage could be severe, where the people are living near these steep slopes, these need to be monitored. And I think there are a number of instruments which are available, like for example Encardio would have a number of instruments to monitor this kind of slopes that can be remotely connected to technology like broadband or maybe the GSM based satellites, and we shall get some triggers. What is required is a trigger. Okay, this is a possibility of maybe a flash flood or maybe landslide, and that's enough for local authorities to evacuate that place so that the precious human lives can be saved. Of course, the properties, you cannot move it in a short span of time. So I think that's what I would say in terms of the prediction of this. As far as the Char Dham, I think it's a learning curve. As a civil engineer, I feel when I travel on these roads a little helpless, like we are cutting these steep mountains and we are cutting it steeply. Mountain maybe at 45 degrees or 50 degrees, and we are cutting it to 60, 70, 80 degrees, a cut of 5 meters to 25 meters. I will just say, just cross your fingers and just pray this slope doesn't come down. I think there is a need to educate more and more. Basically, at the DPR stage, at the fund allocation stage, the fund for protection measures is usually considered extra. Just to give an analogy, for a civil engineer, when we look for the building construction, very simple thing, the foundation cost is hardly 10%, or 15%. The investigation cost could be even lesser than that. But if you spend that amount, you could optimize a lot of things. It's same here, the protection cost could be X amount, but if we put that protection cost, your roads or maybe the infrastructure what you build, maybe railroad or anything, that could be protected for number of years, and you will reduce the maintenance cost. So it has to be a balance between initial investment and the maintenance cost. I think it's that's way it has to go.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, couple of points that I pick up, and before we move to Arushi, you rightly mentioned about this, particularly with respect to Char Dham and projects situated in some of these northern Indian states, right in the middle of the Himalayas. Now, Himalayas, I always maintain, one of the toughest conditions in the world of mountainous conditions, followed by the Andes in South America and Alps in Europe because of younger formations, frequently changing geology. And so in such situations, along a highway alignment, things change every few meters. The geology changes, the geometry of the slope changes, which means, as they say, one size doesn't fit all. So in different sectors, and the sectors could be just a few meters long along the alignment, you need different solutions, which includes a different angle of slopes, etc. But I'm surprised, the projects I get associated, the contractor says, okay, let's cut it all along at 80 degrees. How can you take that decision like that? But what really beats me is, what is the value of the feasibility stage report and the DPR reports? Have we not included those things there? If yes, why are we not following them? If not, why did we not include? I'll come back with those questions. And moving to Arushi. Arushi, Ratnakar probably hogged the limelight, which should have gone to you about monitoring. The floor is for you now to talk about your take as far as how monitoring can really help mitigate some of these issues.
In fact, the one thing that I would, before I talk about how we can monitor it, the one thing that I'd really like to point out here is that the cost of constructing these projects is humongous, okay? The cost of an accident is crazy. I mean, obviously a road is being built today because it is needed. And every time there is a landslide, like recently, I don't know if you heard about these two landslides that happened in Uttarakhand, Tangri and the Ratnakar landslides. How long were the roads shut down? What about that cost? Yes. And if you really look at monitoring, and if those slopes had been monitored, and the landslide had been forecasted, I think that cost itself of clearing up the roads would have taken care of monitoring. See, today the way monitoring has evolved, sensors have evolved, data loggers have evolved, databases have evolved. The cost of monitoring these projects is absolutely insignificant in comparison to the cost of, say, even one accident. For example, even Idukki, how many people died? I think 80 people, or maybe even more. I mean, the last I remember was about in the 80s, because we were doing the Idukki Dam there, which we are still doing, in fact. So what is that cost? It's huge. So I personally feel that there are huge options for monitoring. In fact, if you show me the slides, I can kind of talk about it a little better, because people will talk just that image slide. I think that I'm sure you have it. But basically, in any kind of a landslide, we are only measuring two parameters. One is water, pore pressure, or we are measuring lateral displacement. So here you can see we can put in something like thermometers, we can put in something like in-place inclinometers, overall extensiometers. We also have tilt meters up on if there are any buildings around. And simple instrumentation like this, connected to data loggers, and you can use, say, GSM, or you can use RF. You can also take this whole area survey with drones today. And drones can cover up a very, very large area. And these flights can be repeated, say, every 1 month, every 2 months. How long does it take to cover a couple of kilometers? We can do almost 15 to 20 kilometers of a drone flight a day. How long does processing data take with advanced softwares? Not more than, say, 30 minutes. So this can be a continuous process which can happen, which will give us some information. In fact, today we have softwares like Oxys, with which you can compare data from, say, drones, which have laser scanners or cameras, and do it on a daily basis. Otherwise, you have your sensors which are installed, you have your data loggers, you get it into your database, you can set your alarm level. You can maybe set 3 alarm levels. which says, okay, caution, alert, evacuate. And it gives you enough time. See, one thing which we all understand about structures is that they don't move like that. It's a very rare case where it will just collapse like that. There will be some trend that the sensors will talk about, and that will be over a period of time. So even if you today, in case of a landslide and it's raining and you have your rain gauge, which is measuring the water level, and you're seeing the barometer pressure go up, even if you get, say, maybe 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, maybe even half an hour, you can totally evacuate the site.
Yes.
And if you know that these are the troublesome areas, then you can employ mitigation here. Rather than saying, oh, let's anchor up, kilometers and kilometers of, say, highways or roads or whatever we have. So I do personally feel that a simple monitoring today for a landslide, what is it going to cost? A couple of lakhs. You don't have to do it all. You can even put in a couple of total stations somewhere, these automatic total stations. Get the XYZ coordinate of, say, maybe 50 points on a slope.
Yeah.
So depending on the risk that you can perceive, you do a mix of monitoring. You need to do surface monitoring and you need to do subsurface monitoring. Subsurface, there are only 3 sensors: extensometers, inclinometers, and piezometers. I would say piezometers are an absolute must. A couple of inclinometers are an absolute must. Now, the surface monitoring, depending on what the situation is, if you have buildings, you do tilts. If you have something where you feel there could be cracks or creeps, you monitor that. Rain gauges, for sure. So, how much monitoring is it really? Couple of data loggers, RF or GSM, straight onto your server.
Yeah.
So, I'm of a really strong belief that there are a lot of options today. These options prudently, very cost effectively, can be applied to different situations. Again, like you said, there is no glove that fits all, and there's no need for that also. You don't have to come up with one crazy comprehensive monitoring that if you don't do this, it will not happen. Even if you say put piezometers all over, at least we are seeing water pressure increasing, okay, enough to trigger off.
Yes.
Today in India, we are monitoring water level at 4,500 boreholes pan-India. Data taken 4 times a day, transmitted once a day to a central server. So what stops us from monitoring our slopes like this? What stops us?
Yeah, right. What stops us is the mindset. The mindset, we need to change that. The technology is available, the money is available, because you don't need much money for that. The resources are there. It's the mindset issue.
It's a mindset, and it's also, I think, our importance that we give to accidents and life in our country.
Yes, yes.
It's little, if we take these things a little more seriously, also I think there is a lot of lack of knowledge about the systems that are available today. Awareness.
Arushi, my take on that is there is lack of knowledge, but there is an absolute lack of acceptance that you need knowledge.
Of course.
People, especially up there, they just don't want to accept that. They're very uncomfortable accepting this. And they don't want to be seen. You arrange a course on this, not a conference, a proper course. You won't see many people who actually need to be there because they don't want to be seen there. So those are huge issues which have to be tackled at some other level. And that's where the authorities and the planning has to come into picture. Okay, thank you very much for this. And I go back to Mr. Jitin Mukheja now and to ask you about your views on the sustainable solutions. We talk about long-term things with keeping all the predictions in mind. Sustainable solutions and the products, specific products that you have, which in your opinion would provide maximum safety from landslides in the mountainous terrain.
So, of course, there are the technologies available and the type of solutions that we have. They can cater from all needs of rockfall, landslides, debris flow, shallow landslides. So, coming back to the first point, we first need to understand the type of problem which is existing over there. Then you dig out the historical data and find out the magnitude of the problem and how much it has been affecting that local community and the area. And first you have all the design parameters, everything. You just dig out everything, all the information which is available. But in our cases, 90% of the times it is not available with the authorities. So then you have to make a plan that you include the design investigation into your solutions. Unless you do an investigation, you cannot arrive at a proper design. So most of the times, if the client is quite literate and they know everything about their own area and their own job, so they would provide you information. And even if they don't have it, they will arrange it for you. And they will question you. They will ask every question that they need to know. And that is a very healthy sign that the client is taking interest in taking and accepting that solution wherever he's investing his money. So when we see that kind of proactive attitude from the people, that is a healthy sign that he's much more interested in all sorts of technologies and he's ready to accept that. So coming to the available technologies, you can have solutions that can protect you from shallow landslides. You have solutions that can protect you from debris flow. You have to understand the volume of the debris flow and the type of debris flow, just do a proper design which is sustainable for at least 50 years, 60 years, 75 or 100 years. You have to understand the return channel and you have to understand the return volume of the event which is going to happen again. So, because, for example, in case of a debris flow problem, a debris flow could happen in different surges. And it won't happen in a single surge. I mean, there could be a possibility there are multiple debris flows happening in a span of 2 days or 3 days, let's say, or there could be 10 surges happening altogether. And this kind of event, it may happen once in one monsoon season, or it may not even happen in 10 years, for example, let's say. So you have to understand the return period of this problem, when it can happen again, what type of volume will it bring back with it, and what type of boulders or anything could be brought down with the debris flow, in what area and what kind of forest it is located, what type of gully or torrent is there. So just go through all the details and analyze everything and just arrive with the solution. And I think, yeah, we have this kind of solutions which are available, which can cater to such needs for a very long time. So this is one part of technical design which can take care of the impact pressures in both static and dynamic conditions. And then there is the sustainability in terms of the corrosion life. If the product is not corroding, it's not giving up just because it corroded, and it's not the fault of the dynamic load or the static load, it's the fault of the corrosion. So you just need to have such kind of solutions taking care the problems and the aspects from A to Z, covering everything.
Okay, great. So do you think, Jitin, do you have enough landmark projects in India which could set a benchmark for future landslide mitigation projects? Examples
we have got numerous examples now. When we started our operations, for example, just specifically speaking about Geobrugg, let's say. So when we started in India, it was about 10 years ago, and very frankly speaking, not everybody was very well aware about it, about the solutions which are there. I think Maccaferri was already present, and but still, a lot of people, a lot of market, it was still unaware about the type of solutions which is there. And if we speak about the situation that is now in 2020, I cannot even begin to explain to you how many people are there. And every person has set up their own shop right now. So there are many suppliers, many designers, and now because of this, the awareness now is also spreading. So almost everybody is there with the solution.
Right. So do you also cooperate with NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, in creating awareness about these protection techniques that you're talking about?
Yes, of course. We are always in constant touch with them, and we always organize seminars and awareness exhibitions. And we are always, just like this platform. Now we are under COVID era now at the moment, so we are taking the help of the online platform.
Yes.
So we are always taking in the past also we were always organizing seminars and exhibitions, inviting esteemed people from such community who can understand or who are willing to understand such things and take initiative in this field. So they're always a part of this plan.
Yeah. The only thing is you can't install those protection measures online. You have to physically do it.
Right.
Okay. So one last question in this particular series, when we move before we move to Arushi, how do you approach a landslide problem when somebody approaches you, when you are asked to study this landslide and propose a system for mitigation? So
Yeah.
what sort of, what's your response? What sort of investigations are important, etc., etc.?
Yeah, it's a pretty standard course. The simple protocol is you just have to first visit the site. It's the foremost requirement. Unless you see the site physically, you cannot never estimate the type of problem there is with the pictures or the videos, anything. I mean, they're helpful, but a first-hand experience is always gained by the site visit. So just make a site visit, have a interaction with the client, and if the client is knowledgeable about the problem and if he's ready to give the solutions in the form of data from his office or anything which he has already collected, that's very useful. If not, then we definitely suggest them to have a technical investigation done, just to understand the type of soil and rock and the type of depth which is there, the type of unstable slope, and we just have to understand the type of parameters we need, the type of input we need for our design. So we just prepare that checklist and we collect all the data, then come back to the designing part and get it foolproof checked by a third party also, if that is the requirement of the consultant of the authority. And then I think that's a safe measure. You cannot just rely on one guy. So if that is the requirement, you can get it checked by, let's say, from IIT, you can get it accredited by someone who's really knowledgeable in the field of geotechnical department. And if everything is done and everything is in place, that solution will be accepted by the authority. And then they go forward with the type of how they want to go ahead with the solution.
Okay, great. Arushi, you have spoken a lot about the monitoring part. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? For instance, in your opinion, what are the most effective ways and technologies specifically for monitoring on landslides, including, you didn't mention about it, but if you'd like to add anything on the remote monitoring facilities, etc., before we go for a break. So if you could add to anything that you've discussed earlier.
Yeah, so I think remote monitoring systems are the way to go, because you cannot go into manual monitoring. It is just not possible. And we need to have a combination of monitoring. So in fact, there is a lot of remote sensing that is being done by satellites today. So that is one thing that should be implemented, say, on a region-wise basis in our country. Then you have a second layer where you say have drones. You cover up another area with that. And then in specific sites, you have to have a combination. You have geotechnical sensors, you have some form of, say, either laser scanning or automatic stations, depending, and you have to always complement the entire process. I mean, just to say that, hey, I just want a piezometer, or I'm just using remote sensing, or I'm just using, say, surveying, is not the best way to go forward. Because until it is not all complemented and it's all not comprehensive, it will not give you the best solution. So I think, a grade-wise program, and at grassroots level, at the bottom level, you have a combination of a couple of techniques, and you put it all together, log it into your database, and these databases can be very centralized. We can have either a state-wise database, or we can have a country-wise database, and they're all on cloud, so they're all extremely safe. And put in your triggers and start the monitoring. But I feel it has to be also on a very, very large scale. We are not experts on remote sensing using satellites, but I do think that for landslides, it is definitely an option, and it should be implemented. So it has to be a combination. Ground level will give you the real data, the actual differences, the actual ones. But with the satellite, at least you got an idea that, okay, this is an issue area, let's get it there.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think very well summarized about this. So, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time. We have had a long discussion. The speakers may be a bit tired. The audience must also be tired. So it's a well-earned break which is coming your way. So let's break for 5 minutes with the permission of the organizers. I can see Neha with all her smile on the screen, perhaps telling me something. Is it okay, Neha, to take a 5-minute break now?
Yes, let's take a 2-minute water break.
2-minute water break. Okay.
All right.
We'll be back in 2 minutes. See you on the other side of the break, as they say. Welcome back, everybody, after the break. I hope you had a good break and are looking forward to it. I'm certainly looking forward to asking some more questions, and I'm a bit greedy because the kind of knowledge I'm getting from these enlightened speakers is worth its weight in gold, absolutely. As you must have noticed, all these speakers, they come with so much of knowledge behind them. They're bubbling with information, and it's really cruel to ask them to confine their answers to just a short time, but they are busy people, and I guess all of our participants are also busy, so we have to cut it short. But please keep in touch with them because they are the storehouses of knowledge, these speakers. They have a lot and plenty to share with you, with them. And so with that, let's get back to what we were doing, asking questions. And the next question is for Mr. Jitin Mukheja, and I'd like to ask the uncomfortable question I was talking about, that in your opinion, what are the actions that the Indian government agencies such as NHIDCL, Border Roads Organization, MORTH, etc., I'm rubbing it in, by taking the names so that you don't escape the answering this. What are the actions that they're taking towards prevention of landslides in the mountainous regions of the country, the northern states, Himalayan, and of course the Western Ghats, which are notorious for landslides? And also, in the same vein, you can perhaps answer how updated are DPR consultants while proposing the systems in the tender documents, in the project reports and the tender documents that they prepare.
So I'll begin with the government organizations that we just spoke about. So I think a couple of years back, or not just couple, I think let's say 5 or 6 years back, the situation was totally different, and now it's completely different, and it's very friendly at the moment, to be honest. Organizations like NHIDCL, NHAI, and BRO, and all of them, they are actually now pushing into this field. And I see a lot of projects which are coming up in both the hilly areas, like, for example, northeast belt, the eastern part of India and the northern part of India, and also in southern part of India, wherever there are some problems related to mountainous regions. So, and because these roads that we have on, our neighboring countries, so these are very crucial areas in terms of border safety. So you must have a proper infrastructure, road infrastructure, so that there is a better connectivity of the army, and we feel fully secure. So when it comes to BRO areas and when it comes to NHIDCL areas, they're taking a lot of actions at the moment, preparing a lot of tunnels, preparing a lot of roads, and also taking a lot of actions in terms of providing proper safety at these areas. So definitely the technology is spreading through them, and these authorities are taking proper measures wherever required, and I don't think that there is any problem that we are facing in terms of accepting this technology.
Okay.
Whether it's rockfall barriers or slope stabilization or anything related to a natural hazard solutions, I feel there is a full acceptance now from these government organizations, and there is a wide variety which is getting accepted now.
That's wonderful to know. What about the DPR consultants? Are they updated enough to include those systems?
Yes, for example, DPR consultants who are taking these challenges and preparing reports for the clients. Few years back, they were also quite unaware, and few years back there were also not many agencies who were doing such type of tutorials or such type of sessions for them. And unless you Google, you won't come to a conclusion that okay, this technology is also available right next door. So they won't even know if they are living in New Delhi. There's someone who's living in Gurgaon who can provide you this. So unless you Google it, you won't come to the conclusion. So that was the case a few years back. But now, if there are 1,000 DPR consultants, now I see in Delhi alone, or for example, just taking an example of Delhi, there are 500 consultants who are already aware about such things, and everybody is just fighting just to be L1 in that DPR state so that they can get this job, and this is a standard procedure. So when it comes to the awareness now, I think everybody is aware, and those who are not aware, they are actually on the losing side basically.
Okay,
they don't look very competent then.
Yeah, that's wonderful to know. But sometime back, as you said, they were not so aware. But sometime back, many of these DPRs were prepared by, if you look at the cover, by the multinational agencies.
Right.
They are supposed to know everything. As a consultant, I'm a consultant myself. You are as good as the person working on that project, not the company's name. And So you have examples, and I can't take the name of the projects where the DPR is being redone, which was done 7-8 years back.
Right.
The project went into construction, could not be constructed, and it has gone to DPR. 10 years wasted along with taxpayers' money.
Right.
Very I hope the picture that you are portraying, the things are now looking good. That is a true picture, and the authorities are really serious about this.
No, of course, 100%.
Thank you. Okay, Arushi, would like to know your views on this aspect which I just mentioned about how updated the DPR consultants are, and what are the actions that these government agencies I named, and maybe some more, are taking in making sure or implement that the monitoring part is taken care of?
Okay, I have to say that the government has become a lot more conscious than before. Okay, and besides becoming conscious of monitoring, they're also trying to ensure that the sensors work. So they are putting in certain kind of pre-qualifications. They're also making a Make in India story very strong, which personally I feel is very important, because see, somewhere there has been no, let's say, confidence in monitoring, because a lot of sensors that are installed by these foreign companies do not work. Because they have agents, they don't have the technical know-how, they don't have so many other issues, they just sell and they go. So now with this whole, there is a lot more sensitivity and a lot more consciousness about how the job is being done. Again, there's a lot more that can be done, but they have started working in the right direction. But see, this is a complete industry, and it is not only the government. You have to have the consultants, you have to have the designers, you have to have the construction company, you have to have everybody conscious. So I personally, we as an economy, we as a country have to evolve to this. Now you're talking about knowledge levels. There is so much technology out there. How can somebody be totally aware? So partially it is our job also to educate people, and honestly all of us have become a lot more aggressive on LinkedIn. Our websites are a lot more updated, but things are changing every single day. So I think it's a mix of everything. We are moving, but there's a lot to be done, and it has to be done by each one of us. See, even today, if the government comes up with very strong norms, there are a lot of people, maybe the construction company, maybe the consultants, maybe whatever, like at one point you said they don't want to know, who do not let the right things happen. So all I would say in this situation is we are moving, but we need to move a lot faster. And I also feel somewhere that experts like us, okay, we are the monitoring experts. We must be involved in the brainstorming, or when the major papers are being made, whatever the blueprint is being made, because normally they are made by people who are not out in the field. Right. The way I know a sensor can work, so I'm the real expert. Now you're asking a consultant to really sit back and make things, but he has no idea. He's probably not even seen a site. He does not know what technology is there. So, there is a lot, you really can't point and say, hey, this is what is wrong. It has to be a very comprehensive, a very rounded thing. Though the other side, if you come and tell me, hey, make me a DPR, I'll say I'm not qualified. So everything has to fall into that, I think I personally feel that the actual users or the actual owners of technology have to be involved in at least setting up the blueprint of see, I'm telling you, we do a lot of work in the Middle East, like you're aware. Now with RTA there, we sat there and we worked on their blueprint. And we gave them suggestions. And we said, okay, this is new technology that you can implement. And post that, now for the last 5 or 6 years, monitoring in Dubai has changed. So that's what I mean. We're in the experts, we're going in the right direction, but there's a lot more to be done.
Yes, I think that's the need of the hour. I'd like to ask you, Arushi, are there any pilot projects currently that you're doing with government authorities or with private contractors for such systems?
Yeah, we're doing lots of these systems. We are even doing landslides. We are also doing another, we're just talking about natural landslides. But say if you take the governor's bungalow in Goa, now that's on a hill and there's river all around. So mitigation was done there, right? So we are monitoring that also for now, maybe almost 10 years. So all kinds of monitoring is happening. And even naturally, even landslides. In fact, I think at the moment we are installing 3 landslides. So work is happening, but Yeah, there's a lot more of them. There's lots more tenders coming up. So it is happening, yeah. There's a lot of
Great.
consciousness now.
Great.
Like
And I
what
can
you said
see.
in the DRDO.
Yes,
Yeah, sure,
yes.
sorry.
Right. I can see Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan quietly smiling. It's your turn now, I know. Before we put an end to this discussion, unfortunately, I have to ask, unfortunately, it's with the end of discussion, not with Dr. Mahajan. I have to fortunately ask Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan to express your views about what we are discussing. About the authorities and how updated they are, what actions they are taking, how updated the DPR consultants are. And also, while you answer, I would like you to add some comments about some of your landmark projects, and specifically the one that you are currently doing in Uttarakhand, how those are performing and whether the objectives have been met with.
Okay. So I think you have, for me, thank you for merging two questions, because now I can link the project and the answer to the question. I think when we talk about the works what are being done now, as I explained earlier, there are a lot of things to be done as usual. Any things you see, oh, this is being done, but we could have done this better. It's always like that. We are a human race. We always try to improve on continuously. So when I see compared to the past, of course, there have been improvements, and I feel it's as a part of one of the stakeholders in this industry. It's our responsibility also to make sure that the technologies what we think are appropriate to be incorporated. Just to give an idea, I would just like to share one presentation. I hope you are able to see the presentation.
Yes.
So this is, a landslide project having different landslides, like around 7, but I will not be able to cover all 7 of them in view of the time. I will just touch one of them. That's the Birahi landslide, where it was from Ministry of Road Transport Highways, and the contractor was RG Bidwell, and Maccaferri was the technology partner. Now, being a technology partner, the best way to approach these kind of problems, I would say, is you first, of course, is the site visit. And for Indian terrain, especially I would say if I talk about Himalayan terrain, it has to be dealt with a mix, multidisciplinary approach. Like you must have a knowledge of geotechnical engineering, but the most important part is the geology, engineering geology. It's a core of it. And then the most important part is about how do you do the investigation. For example, this is the landslide. Where are you going to do your investigation is a multi-dollar question, whether you can go and put your rigs here, do the investigation. Just to give you an idea, this is a Birahi slide, which was 2006, looks to be stable, 2011, some disturbances, this is 2016. And this was the area which was constantly sinking. What we did, we combined the investigation of geotechnical investigation, geophysical investigation, and a geological report. That's being combined together, so we understand the full terrain. The important part in landslides, water. Water is a friend and enemy. It's though people will be saying, how can the water be enemy? But it's a friend and enemy for geotechnical engineers. If you add the optimum moisture content, you can compact the soil to 95 to 98%. But if you have excess water, it creates havoc. The soil loses its shear strength. In rocks, in the joints, if the water goes, it acts as a lubricant. There are a lot of things happens because of water. But if you drain out this water effectively, you can stabilize the whole landslide properly. This is one aspect which we have brought a difference. Like as a stakeholder, we brought a difference in this landslide treatment. A proper drainage plan was prepared, because as a geotechnical engineer, civil engineer, we tend to see the mechanics point of view. Okay, this is going to slide, this is the factor of safety, how do I stabilize? But keep in mind, a proper drainage, if you take, I think we are taking most of the problem out. So proper drainage plan, to have drainage toe of the hills and around the hill was done. And then, of course, what kind of geology is there, that's being studied. After that, protection in terms of the reinforced soil wall, ABN walls, and were they put in place. In addition to that, this is the project first time where the instrumentation has come up as a part of tender, where the instruments were like measuring the pressures, measuring the loads, inclinometers to check the movement of strata, and so on and so forth, as well as the fascia movement. And this is like a cross section. Earlier there were conventional walls which were replaced with now technology of reinforced soil, which is suitable for highly seismic zone, use of local field construction, and as well as local the people were used. So that's how the structure is being put in place, and this is very beautiful structure now being there. The project is completed, and client is happy with the structure. So with this, I would like to say, yeah, things are moving in good direction. As a stakeholder, I would again reiterate, we need to do our part of education and be a part to this whole, I would say, the work, and incorporate these details at the DPR stage itself. With this, yeah, that's what I would like to mention.
Wonderful. That's very impressive. Actually, such case studies really give you confidence that things are moving in the right direction. We have the right people in place. And so with that, although you like it or not, I don't feel like leaving this, but we have to end it. All good things must come to an end. So that's the end of the technical part of this, but nothing ends without giving audience their due share. There are many questions being asked. We can unfortunately take only 5 questions. So let's go to the questions put up by audience. And I believe with the permission of the organizers, those who want to ask more questions can send in your questions, and we'll try to get our experts to answer those questions as soon as possible. Okay, right. So let's take 5 questions from audience. I'll read out. Neha, would you like to read out the questions?
Okay, I think the most recent question is by Mr. Timir Varan Ghoshal. It's directed to Arushi, and the question is, it is requested to have simple alarm system for stress monitoring in tunnels. Lesson from PHPA 2 Bhutan. So he wants to talk about some alarm system, I believe. That's the question. So can you throw some light on that, Arushi?
Well, all online monitoring systems today have alarms. Like I said before, we can set 3 stages of alarms. It is not an issue at all, and the alarms can be, you can decide, you can set them on at a initial level, a trigger level, and then normally evacuate them. So alarms is not an issue. I understand what you're referring to it at PHPA, so it's definitely a problem. Yeah.
Okay. There's another question that we can pick up from Mr. Abhineet Godial from Spargeo. He's asking the question that any handy instruments to get idea of depth of first layer in brackets overburden. So would you like to take this question, Mr. Jitin?
Sorry, could you just read that again?
The question is, any handy instruments to get idea of depth of first layer?
No, unless I think you do the proper geotechnical investigation, then I don't think that there is any handy instrument that can give you an accurate analysis. And of course, you need to understand that the depth may vary from chainage to chainage. It could be a difference of 10 meters in chainage also. So you just need to go through a proper analysis, and such devices won't give you the accurate data. And the unstable layer thickness, just knowing about the unstable layer thickness won't give you the correct idea. You need to find out what actually lies beneath that. You need to find out the depth of the hard rock data as well.
All right. Another question we have from the audience is that in India, we don't have standardized guidelines or codes for the industry like Europe has EPA. Do you foresee an operational change in the industry with India formulating codes and having a governing body? Would any of you like to throw some light on it? Maybe Mr. Dr. Mahajan?
Okay, Neha. I think, if we look at the different bodies which make the guidelines or standards in India, like Bureau of Indian Standards, as well as Indian Road Congress, or maybe RDSO. So for especially sticking to the landslides, so there are some beautiful documents from Indian Road Congress about hill road manual as well as landslide mitigation measures in hilly areas. There are very good documents. Of course, please, whenever we see these guidelines, as an engineer, we must read the first 2 pages where it is usually mentioned. These are guidelines, which means, okay, they are guidelines, but you need to practice as per the site condition. Like if we see the Europe guidelines, most of the guidelines, they are open kind of nature, not restricting certain things. And same things has to be practiced. So, and there are some guidelines which are now the Indian Road Congress is in making. So I think they are making guidelines on some hill areas. Hill road manual is getting revised. So obviously it's always practice to use the Indian guidelines. In absence of Indian guidelines, we can adopt, of course, the best practices available worldwide. So yes, I would say yes, we are developing guidelines, but it doesn't stop us doing the work. We have international and we can continue doing that.
Okay. Another question from the audience is that's from I think PNG Geohazard Solutions by Jitendra Sharma. What type of sensors can be used for monitoring of systems installed for landslide mitigation? And also, is there any criteria to specify the number of such sensors, and are these sensors adaptable to site conditions like high or low temperature? Arushi, this is for you.
Yeah, so I just kind of explained the different kind of sensors. That can be used for landslide monitoring, and you cannot see every landslide will be monitored differently. So that is why the site investigations have to be done before. What are you trying to really anticipate? What is your your threat level on a particular landslide? So a combination of monitoring systems can be employed. Now, if you have a specific landslide, we'll be happy to discuss that with you and suggest what you can do as a kind of a bare minimum kind of monitoring in case that's what you're looking for. And temperature is something that sensors always need to be protected. Sensors which are installed subsurface are normally, because beyond say 20 meters, 30 meters, the temperature variation in the ground level does not impact the sensors. But most of these landslides now we are talking about hilly regions. So it's cold, it's snowing, it's crazy kind of, we have extremes of temperature. So in that case, we have to have protection system on sensors. It can be done, it is being done. So for any kind of surface installations, I would application, protection of a sensor is extremely important. It's like I put you out in 46 degrees, you're going to crash. So you prefer that 25, 26 degrees, even sensors have a proper monitoring range. You cannot put them out in 46 degrees and say, hey, now let's get the data. Protection is important. But the rest of it, I gave you that little slide on monitoring systems. Any other information, I'll be happy to, you can email and we'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you.
So Neha, are we done with 5 questions now?
Yes.
Okay. Great. As I said, please keep sending the questions and we'll try to get the experts to answer those questions. And the time now to say bye-bye with a heavy heart, if I add a bit of dramatics to this, but that's really what I mean. Actually, these kind of discussions, to get these speakers on one platform, they're very busy people, and to have their opinion on a range of topics is really enlightening. I'm really fortunate to be here, and I really thank GeoXchange for this opportunity. But on a larger level, it's time to thank the sponsors of this event, thank the partners, and of course, to the participants. You are the plank on which these events stand. So with those things, I think it's time to say bye-bye, and hopefully we'll have more such events. So I'm looking forward to this. And as I mentioned earlier, please download GeoXchange's first edition of the magazine, and we'll be delighted to see the format and the contents there. So thank you very much, and see you soon at some other forum.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
everybody.
everyone, for joining in.
Thank you so much.
Arushi. Thank you, Dr. Mahajan. Thank you, Jitin. Thank you, Dr. Verman, for agreeing to moderate the first session for us. And our sponsors, Geobrugg, for being kind enough for the support. And we will hopefully do another session very soon. And once this pandemic ends, we'll start doing on-ground events.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, wonderful attendees, for making this success. Thank you so much for everybody attending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.